Hello there, thank you for wishing me a happy 50k subscriberinos. Tar to you, my chaps and chapettes and lads and ladettes and however you choose to identify yourself, because go you! You're an individual, you can choose exactly who you want to be. You've probably often seen the fact that upon reaching a subscriber milestone I haven't really said much or even done much. You might have thought, that flippin' Regit, what an ungrateful spawn, laugh cry emoji. See, the thing is, it's definitely not my intention to be ungrateful for these, but then again, intentions aren't all that important, it's the consequences that really matter, so let me address the consequences and at least try and make sense of them, so it doesn't seem as if the consequence is me making people sad because I don't care. I do care, there are just some issues, and the main issue is that subscriber amounts, although nice with their numberiness, mean absolutely nothing. They have no significance when it comes to deciding whether I'm actually going to be able to make a career out of this, make a job out of this, and I would love to do that. I really would. I mean, I have so many tales of woe to tell you about the coursework element of my A-levels, which is technically a tiny amount over the whole three of them, but has been one of the most dreadful experiences of my entire life, and it continues to be dreadful even now because it's still going on. And you know, all these things like that, it makes me think, wow, I really don't want a kind of normal job, even if it is in the creative industries, because it's going to be like that. I want to be able to do this where I can make my work independently, make content people enjoy, and when people bully me, I can consciously avoid them by closing a tab. Fantastic. You know that it's 50,000, which is a brilliant number, but a video will often be performing well if it's got 10,000 views, and that happens about 50% and not much more than that of the time. And that's if it's a Battle Cats video. If it's something else, well, sod me, nobody's going to watch it. And ultimately, as much as I am putting all the effort I can into making sure that all the money I have is in the best kind of banking and building society places to make it turn into more money, side note, I think investing is a terrible idea. I'd make sure that I can definitely get a return. But the thing is, I haven't had to go it alone, thank goodness, yet. And so when I eventually do, that will be me finding out how much it costs to live. Because I have got no idea, and from what I've heard from condescending remarks about the amount that I earn each month, it's not enough to live off of. And that means that essentially, as much as these subscriber numbers might be going up, it isn't allowing me to live off YouTube, which is what I really want to be able to do, because I get very anxious about a lot of things, and entering the world of work would be a huge and terrible and inconvenient and likely miserable thing if my coursework has been anything to go by, and I don't want to have to do that. I really don't. What would be fantastic would to be, even if it gave me a sort of very ascetic, and that's ascetic, ASC, not aesthetic, which is a completely different word, life where I'm living with just enough food to survive. That's fine if I can do this. I can get a certain sense of enjoyment out of that and just subsiding on YouTube. But I think what I will be earning won't nearly be enough. On that kind of separate segue, people have been recommending to me, Regit, set up a Patreon, use spawn, sobbing emoji. And I mean, that's a fair enough point. Avi of Evix, who recently we reconciled with, which is great news, always talk to people, you know, good thing to do, talked to me about Patreon and that and suggested what a good idea it was. And I mean, she made some very good arguments for that, and I can greatly understand it. I just always thought that the kind of content I made, although the recent feminism video is demonetized by YouTube because they don't care about education, my content is typically quite friendly to the YouTube way of making money. They're Let's Play videos that have edits that aren't intensive, or they're not projects that you work really hard on to produce a small project, like musicians musicians, animators, or my horrendous media coursework. So that means I can bring out a video every couple of days if I can keep myself regimented and actually getting on with the work that I need to, and make the most of the way YouTube is structured. So I thought, actually, really, it would kind of be a little bit scummy for me to have a Patreon when it should really be for these artists, animators, musicians who spend loads of time on something that you can't translate into a 10-minute plus video. So the time might well come that I do actually set up a Patreon. If that's what you want, I'm going to hold what we like to call in politics an indicative vote, a non-binding poll on whether you think I should set up a Patreon. Non-binding meaning that, you know, if you say don't set up a Patreon, I still could. But that's not what I plan to do. The poll would be to gauge your opinion as to what you think about that, and whether you think my anxieties over setting up a Patreon are important enough for you to think, yeah, Regit doesn't actually deserve a Patreon. Well, if he can't live off YouTube, that's just the free market. And if people kind of overwhelmingly want me to do it, I guess I will go through the process of starting to set it up and working out what on earth I could offer for it. I mean, recently I was approached by some people on the business email, not for anything that will actually give me any kind of financial incentive, but people who just wanted me to use their website. It looks a little bit like Patreon, but the difference is that you're offering services to people for them to pay you to be a content creator, like some sort of strange hybrid of Fiverr and Patreon. I didn't like the idea at first, but I mean, I gave them a chance to explain it to me after I said to them, and they engaged in polite debate. I mean, if you know me, you know I love polite debate. It's just one of the best things. Debate politely, please. And they explained the reasons behind what they were thinking. It didn't sound quite as bad as it did round the first time. But ultimately, Avivik said to me that, you know, something obscure like that, it isn't going to get much sense of security in the viewership, especially when they're giving money to people. And then she made a good point about bank statements and it all going out in one, which is what Patreon does, sort of like bundling them, and that's much better or something. So Patreon seems like the better idea, but essentially the idea I got from that place was doing my A-levels but being paid for it, and that's the worst possible way I could advertise it. But the idea being that perhaps as a patron I could have chats with you about philosophy, give you some ethical theories and what I think about ethical theories, or politics, and we could have a long discussion about Brexit if you like, or even the media industries, how exciting for you. And although the primary reason for you doing that wouldn't be paying for them, because you don't need to pay for my opinion, I mean, I'm, you know, really requesting people to watch videos so they can hear my opinion for free, but you get it for free after paying some money to help me subside on YouTube. I think although intentions generally aren't important, that's called the doctrine of double effect, and it's the idea that the good intention should come first, and whatever kind of not so great outcome can't be the thing that you're seeking. The not so great outcome being you're essentially paying for me to talk about my A-levels. Anyway, that was one idea, and I'm sure people can have other ideas as to what I could actually do for patrons. I don't have many ideas myself, but I guess that's why you're here. I'm sure you could have plenty of great ideas. Communities usually do. Usually inspire great change in the creator sphere. Anyway, essentially, in brief terms, that is the reason why I don't get that excited by subscriber milestones. I am grateful to everyone who subscribes, but ultimately, unfortunately, I see it in a very cynical sense, that no matter what the number is, that has no bearing on whether I'm going to be able to live off YouTube, really, or very little bearing. It's only really a tiny bit of correlation to a likelihood that more people will be watching the videos, but that's not necessarily true. People talk about empty subscribers, where people have subscribed but they've lost interest but stay subscribed anyway. I've noticed I've done that with a couple of people I'm subscribed to now, that you end up just not watching their videos, and so you are a false number on their screen. And so even though the whole number is great and these people all subscribed at one point, it isn't conducive to you making a living off of it, which is what I really want to be able to do and won't be able to tell from a certain number. But I will try and say this now, and it is genuine, although I won't sound excited. Thank you very much for subscribing, and I'm very glad to have hit this number. It's not a bad thing, it's just not objectively a good thing. And as I said, the good thing I won't know whether that's happened until I either manage to live off YouTube or I don't. And hopefully I'll be able to. I really want to be able to. In any case, that's it, and I think that's all I have to say on the matter. So let me know what you think about that, about Patreon, about my nerd cat not being a hacker cat. Yeah, anything you like, tell me. Let's engage in polite debate. Again, one of the best things ever. And as I leave you with that best thing ever floating about in your mind, I will bid you goodbye and say, I hope you enjoyed.